All right, welcome to today's video, all about how to fill out the exclusive right to sell listing contract for residential property. First and foremost, much like the buyer's contract or buyer's agency, if you have watched that video yet, at the very top here, you're going to want to designate whether you're a seller's agent or a transaction broker. Um, the way that I kind of distinguish that between and for my clients is think about it as a game. And in the game, you have a coach and you also have a referee. As a seller's agent, I would be more of the coach in the game where I'd help with strategy. I know the game, I follow the rules, but I have strategy and coach and guide you along the way. But a transaction broker would be more of a referee where they know the game, but they can't really give anybody any tips, pointers, or things that would help them win the game. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to be a seller's agent. We do hang our license under a multiple person firm, Keller Williams. Sellers' names, just much like the buyer's names, you're going to want to make sure that you have them detailed out correctly. On the listing side of things, the best way to do it is go to the public records for the property and see how they have taken title. You're going to want your contracts to match how they've taken title before, and who's all on title should be in here as well. Fill out your name as the broker. Keller Williams First Realty is who our office is through, so make sure your office's name is there as well. For the property, this is where you're going to want to put the lot and block. So I don't have an example pulled up right here right away, but this is where you would put the county that the property's in, and then this is where you would put the lot and block address, if you will, not the common address. The common address, or what we would put on an envelope and mail something to somebody, would go down here. So lot and block here, common address down here. Continuing right along, make sure in any of my videos, make sure you read and you go through any of the clauses that we're kind of skipping over. This is most likely not going to be an affordable housing situation, but if it is, make sure you know the ins and outs of that. I'm not going to negotiate the lease or sale of a lease through this. We are going to list the home. So section 3.7 is where I want to start putting my dates and deadlines. This is where this first date here is when you're going to be engaging with your seller, when this thing is when you're going to start doing work for that property and marketing it and things of that nature. So for the purposes of this video, let's do June 5th today. And as you've seen probably in some of my other videos, maybe not, I like to use anywhere from 3, 6, 9 months to 12 months. Obviously, the more you have somebody under an agency agreement, the longer they are there to work with you. So for the purpose of the video, let's just put it out until the end of the year. Let's go December 31st, roughly 6 months there. Continuing right along, computation period of days and deadlines. So if there's any dates or deadlines throughout this contract that would fall on a weekend or holiday, we need to designate whether they will or will not proceed to the next business day. I'm a big fan of will. I think we get busy. We can so oftentimes put in deadlines where it may not be on the exact holiday. However, maybe there's a title company or maybe there's a business that recognizes the holiday and takes time off and shuts down their operations the day before or the day after the actual holiday, should it fall on a weekend. So anyways, I'm a big fan of will in this category, but make sure, again, if you do will not, you understand what you're selecting. Section 4, brokerage relationship. I like to leave this section blank. We do have the option of checking the box, seller's agency only. I like to be a seller's agent unless a brokerage relationship with both. And what this allows you to do is, if you were to procure a buyer for that property, you wouldn't need to amend this contract per se to get rid of seller's agency only. What we would need to do is amend this contract then to be a transaction broker over just a sole listing agent. So I like the seller's agency unless brokerage relationship with both default. As far as your brokerage duties and tasks that you need to do for your clients, read through sections 5 and section 6. This is exactly what you should be doing for your clients, advocating for them, making sure that they get to their end game, making sure that, do they want to sell their home in a timely manner, or do they want to get the most bang for their buck, and making sure that your marketing efforts and your conversations with them are in alignment with your job. Section 5.8, when asked, broker will or will not disclose prospective buyers, cooperating brokers, the existence of offers on the property. This is something that, commonly I like when I'm able to disclose, but make sure you have this conversation with your seller. They may or may not want you to disclose that information. They may want people to just bring all of their offers and not have any idea of where things are at. So make sure you have that conversation with your seller. Section 7, compensation. This one we definitely want to touch on, because what they've changed in these contracts can kind of confuse some people. So I myself, and again, commission is negotiable. Not everybody uses the same commission. Just throwing a little disclaimer out there. You need to make sure you know what your worth is. You need to make sure you understand what you're going to be asking and negotiating with your sellers. For the purposes of this video, and for me and myself, I use 6% unless otherwise negotiated upon with my sellers. And so if I put in 6% here, and let's say that I myself would like to pull, let's call it 3 or 3.2% for my commission on the sale of it. We definitely know that throughout the sales commission, the sellers traditionally pay the buyer's agents or transaction brokers throughout the deal. And so if a buyer comes to us with another agent, and they're a buyer's agent or a transaction broker, we would either promote 2.8% or 3%. The key with this is, and this was an update, our legal team, Damian Cox, this year, through our yearly update, had mentioned making sure that this buyer's agent compensation box matches the transaction broker's box. What it does is this kind of defaults into not necessarily stating exactly what the selling side is going to be taking. So if I have buyer's agent at 2.8% or a transaction broker at 2.8%, this clearly shows, and by clearly I mean you have to do the math, this shows that I would be receiving 3.2% per this agreement. So 6 minus the 2.8 is 3.2. If I'm going to 3% here, then I know that I'll be receiving 3% as well as the buyer's agent or transaction broker. If you have any questions about how to fill this out, let me know, and we can go from there. I'm not going to be leasing this property. I highly suggest that if you do get into that realm, you talk to a mentor, you talk to the managing broker about what you need to know and the ins and outs behind that. Section 723. This is also kind of what I would call your holdover period for the listing side of things. So if you're doing a holdover period, I like 60 or 90 days. And if this does happen, or this goes into effect because the seller is doing something either behind your back or without your knowledge, I would want a commission owed to me, especially if I'm in engagement with them and they go around this contract and use someone else. I definitely want to make sure that all of my marketing costs are covered. So again, any questions you have on holdover periods, reach out. There's a couple different reasons and realms around filling this part out. Section 9, MLS information. This property will be submitted to the MLS, and this property will be submitted to one or more information exchanges. Information exchanges would be your online search engines such as Zillow and Trulia. Traditionally speaking, we want this to be exposed to the entire world, but you do have those instances where a seller may or may not want their personal belongings on the internet. And so you have to have that conversation. You have to know what this is going to state, but obviously the will to the MLS, kind of self-explanatory there, but the will to information exchanges means that it's going to go out to the world essentially through the web. Section 914, 915, the property address will be displayed on the internet. We need people to get there. But making sure there's a box here for a reason. So make sure you have that conversation with your seller. Property listing will be displayed on the internet. Depending upon what kind of lockbox you use, either an electronic lockbox such as a Sentry lock or a manual lock, you have the option here. And then if you have any sort of, older combination locks, I still would classify them as manual lock boxes, but I have seen some people designate exactly what's here. And then going down here, what this is a big topic of discussion right now. Section 992. Other than the broker, the seller further authorizes the following persons to access the property. Obviously, we'd love to have actively licensed real estate brokers in the property. That should be a given for the seller. But again, it's an optional checkbox, so make sure you have this conversation. We need licensed appraisers to get in there to appraise the property. Otherwise, the buyer's not going to be able to complete their loan. Unlicensed broker assistants. So there are some brokers out there who have assistants who are unlicensed and in a bind need to send out their assistants to go show a house. Make sure that you have this conversation with your seller to see if they're comfortable with having an unlicensed entity in the home showing some prospective buyers. And then also the same thing with unlicensed inspectors. If there's a big thing in our world about inspectors being licensed and certified and all of that. In the state of Colorado, they're just certified. That's all they are. So they are all unlicensed. So this unlicensed inspectors doesn't really designate or doesn't really do anything, but I encourage my sellers to at least allow the unlicensed inspectors in. Again, the buyer's going to want to have an inspection done. If we're not going to allow them to come in, I find it very difficult for the buyer to want to go through the transaction or the contract with us. Broker marketing info. This is where you would definitely put in all of the highlight, all the features that you want to, portray to yourself, everything that you know that you're going to be doing. So much like, having it syndicate or the MLS or the property be submitted to information exchanges, this is where I kind of go and I kind of type this out in layman's terms. It says, we're going to be marketing this to thousands of different websites. Anybody can pick this up online. You can see this in China, anywhere that you would go in the world. If you wanted to find this property, you'd be able to find it through a quick Yahoo, Google search, you name it. So because of that, and the purposes of this video, type that out, mastermind around it, send it to your mentor, send it to your coach, have some people review it. There's heavy listing agents out there who have very awesome clauses and things that they've entered into this arena. Make sure that you are thinking that through and make sure you want to highlight your business the way you see fit. All right, moving right along. Section 10, seller's obligation to the broker and disclosures. No listing agreement, no existing listing agreement. This is where the seller is committing to us that they are not or is not currently a party to any listing agreement and that they have not received a list of submitted prospects pursuant to the previous listing agreement and sell it with any other broker. So again, this is just a double reiteration to commit that they are not using someone else. They haven't engaged with somebody else. There's not another contract out there that they think that they've terminated and maybe they haven't. This is where you have that conversation as well. Continuing on, once you go through your CMA, you definitely want to help the sellers price the house. They're always going to kind of look to you for guidance on this. I'm a big fan of giving the sellers a kind of like a range, a comp range, and seeing kind of where they feel their home fits in that range. I feel like if you really hone in and you really try and come out the gate with what you think you should list the home for, it starts to put a preconceived notion in the seller's head, and they may not be honest with you. They may take your price and not really be happy about it. So we want to make sure that they understand that we're executing this with all parties kind of agreements in mind. So again, I like to give them a range so that way I know if they're completely out of the price range, I may or may not want to take this listing. But as long as they're within that price range, I'm usually pretty comfortable. And then that allows them to kind of have some power of choice. And then that allows them to kind of understand that wherever they set their price, if they don't receive an offer, it wasn't something that you designated. And on the flip side of things, if they set the price and they receive 5 different offers, they may think that they're leaving money on the table. In reality, if you receive 5 different offers, probably going to boost the price up anyways. So again, I like to make sure that I leave this blank for the time being until I'm actually sitting down with the client to absolutely understand what we're going to be placing in this. Keep in mind too, if you set a price in here and it's about 2 to 3 weeks later that they want to put their house on the market, the comps may have changed. You need to make sure you're price watching your listings week in and week out. Every week there's probably something that closes in that area, and it may or may not be a comp for this property, and it may cause that price to go down or up. Obviously, in an upscale market like we're in right now, things are going up. So price watching is even more important. So that way your sellers aren't leaving money on the table. Take a look at the house. Make sure you know the distinguishing factors between what FHA and VA appraisers look for on a property. If a property has, let's say chipping, peeling paint on the exterior, 3 layers of shingles on the roof, flooring missing, some siding missing, you name it. There's some things that the appraisers on the VA and FHA side of things do not like, and they will not. They'll appraise the house in value, but they won't sign off on the appraisal, and you can't move forward until you meet those quote unquote conditions for the appraisal. So, for the purposes of this video, let's just talk about nice family residential home in a lot and block address. Everything seems to be pretty squared away. I'd probably accept all types of money, all types of loans. Everything's green if we can get to the closing table. All right. Earnest money. This is where you would distinguish what you're going to ask the buyers to come up with earnest money. Kind of like talking with your seller. It's kind of, just give them the 1 to 2% definition and see what they come up with. This is one where I have no problem seeing agents kind of designate or pop in there what their 2 cents are on this. If it's a $450,000 home, let's just go with 4,500, maybe $5,000. This shouldn't make or break any sort of conversation with your sellers, but just go ahead and put in what you see fit, but my rule of thumb is at least 1 to 2%. All right, seller's proceeds. This states that where the seller's net proceeds will be. So should the sellers be selling the property and actually receiving some money back, you can do a cashier's check, you can wire the funds at closing, you name it, select the box, have that conversation with your seller. Moving right along to inclusions and exclusions. This looks very familiar from the actual contract to buy and sell real estate residential. So if you know how to fill that piece out, make sure you go through this in detail with your seller. Make sure you go through and ask them if they have solar panels, water softener, security systems, satellite systems, how many garage remotes they have. All of this stuff, though, here's the key, and this is the same way on the contract to buy and sell. I see a lot of people putting in the inclusions in this personal property conveyance area. Appliances and things of that nature. So appliances, garbage disposal, dishwasher, washer, dryer. Those all need to go here because they're fixtures, whether they're fixtures or personal property, they're also included in the purchase price. Personal property conveyance means that this should be something that's free and clear of all taxes and whatnot. But however, if it's furniture, a boat, a motorcycle, most likely your lender is not going to want to see it in any one of these categories and more on a bill of sale. So rule of thumb, other inclusions, your appliances go here. Exclusions, even if you have a vacant property, I'm a big advocate of putting seller's personal property in this. For the buyer side of things, you want the seller to remove all their personal property. And on the listing side of things, you want to make sure that you kind of jog your seller's memory and mind to say, okay, I know you have a vacant property, but do you have anything in the attic? Do you have anything in the crawl space? Is there anything behind the shed out back? Is there anything along the side of the garage? You name it. Every time a seller kind of vacates or leaves the property, there may be that 1 or 2 little areas that they haven't yet cleaned out, and this little conversation right here could really jog their memory and cause the transaction to go much smoother, and they might be able to remove those items before it actually is listed. Parking and storage facilities. This is where you would designate whether there's a 1 car attached, 2 car detached, a parking space if you're looking at a townhome or condo. This is where you would fill in those. This one over here, and the use or ownership of the following storage facilities. This is where you would put the shed out back, or the Quonset hut, the chicken coop, the loafing shed. Some of those acreage properties definitely have more storage facilities than more of an in-town lot and block property, but that's where you designate that. If you are dealing with any sort of water rights, mineral rights, well rights, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to tell you to reach out to your mentor. I'm going to tell you to reach out and make sure you have some guidance on how to do that and what kind of things you need to provide, especially like with the well. You need to have the well permit number. You need to make sure the title company can find that permit number, and documentation to follow. So anyways, for the purposes of this, we are looking at a city water and sewer property. So this would all be left blank. And this would the city water and sewer portion would be disclosed on the source of water addendum that you would then have your sellers fill out with you and be able to provide to the buyer. 14, title and encumbrances. So conveyance of title, make sure you understand and talk through this with the seller what they're comfortable providing to the buyer side. In this environment that we're in right now, we're being advised to convey special warranty deeds to the buyer. But if it's something where it's an estate, it may be a personal representative's deed. You name it, just make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. A general warranty deed is perfectly fine as well. But right now we are being urged to go into a special warranty deed unless you can otherwise state something else is going on. Moving right along here. This stuff is left traditionally blank. Monetary encumbrances. This would be more if there was a lease, there was something going on with tenants, their possessions, monetary encumbrances, something that that the seller definitely knows they owe on the property, maybe some back taxes, liens, something of that nature. Traditionally speaking, this is left blank unless you have one of those one-offs. But again, then you should be seeking a mentor or coach to guide you through that. Evidence of title, leave the abstract of title blank. That is something that will cost the sellers at the seller's expense. It's quite a large expense sometimes. If you need to know what an abstract of title is, call your local title rep and maybe even a title examiner to explain that in full detail for you. Association assessments, this is where you fill out all the information around the HOA. Possession of the property. So possession of the property will be delivered to the buyers as follows. Usually what we would put in here is upon delivery of deed. If the seller is okay with closing on the house and giving possession to the buyer, same day, same time, right after closing, put upon delivery of deed. If the sellers want, 3 days back, 2 weeks back in the home after you close, you just simply spell that out there. 3 days after delivery of deed, 12 days after delivery of deed. I like seeing the after delivery of deed thing because if you put and designate the closing date can be amended. It can be lost in translation through counter proposals, you name it. I like to see upon delivery of deed or after delivery of deed. All right, seller's obligation to provide a seller's property disclosure form. Hopefully you run at 99, 100% of the time. Your sellers have no objection to filling that out for you. Disclose. We could talk about that all day, so we'll keep moving on. All right. Forfeiture of payments. This says that if a buyer should forfeit or default on the property and the earnest money is due to be held by the title company and not given back to the buyer, this is where you can designate whether you're going to give all the 100% of the earnest money to the seller. Maybe you're going to divide it in two between you and the seller. And maybe you're going to take all of it and bring all of it to your listing or your brokerage firm. I pretty much suggest you give it all to your seller. They're more likely to stick with you if something falls apart, and then you can put it back on the market and get that thing sold again. Moving right along, additional provisions. If you're on a team, make sure you designate here who's all on your team, who's all going to be interacting with the seller, who's all going to be privy to this contract as far as like who's going to be working on it and marketing and who can see this. You definitely need to designate who your team is and what you're working with. If you're a solo agent and have a transaction broker and the transaction broker is going to be working on the file, the transaction broker's name needs to be in here. It just simply states that, something along the lines of seller and broker agree that broker is a part of this contract as well as X transaction coordinator. Just keep it simple. Just disclose. If there's any attachments, so if there's a property that's built before 1978, you might want to attach a lead-based paint disclosure form to this. Source of water is definitely on there. Seller's property disclosure should be in there. All the typical disclosure attachments that you would have with a seller's listing, you can label here. And then that is about the entirety of this contract. This says electronic notice and delivery. You can put internet here. If you plan on it signing online through DocuSign, CTM, Iris, any of the online document signature platforms. Fill out the seller's information here. Obviously, you probably are going to have the street name and address. You can probably leave that blank. I use a lot of these fields just more for my own communication sake. Quick email reminder, quick phone number reminder, and that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you again next time. Take care.